Hello, I'm Dasha Wilkins, and that sexy man is Joon-Hung, a Korean billionaire businessman from Seoul, Korea. He is serving me breakfast in bed. We are at a rented penthouse in Dayton. We are now 9 months into our relationship. I worked with him for 3 years in his company in Korea, but we avoided connecting up. That is, until the moment I was leaving to come back home to the state. But as you can see, he made the trip back with me and is running his companies from North America. In his 4 years since his divorce, he worked and remained a bachelor. He had a live-in, full-time driver, valet, housekeeper, and a chef. But in Dayton, he is roughing it a bit. No driver, no valet, housekeeper comes once a week. However, on the weekends, he personally does all of the cooking and enjoys it. I was the sous chef. The weekdays his chef prepared the meals that allow all of our focus to be on work and business, but the weekends was his time to be hands-on. He was discovering being domestic was a way to unwind. It was clear he actually was raised with staff, so this was not new money. This was generational wealth. But for him, he liked doing things especially for others. Having staff do domestic tasks was so that he could be a machine and work every waking moment. But his parents taught him about expanding and establishing his own independent wealth. The fact that he didn't have to make and serve me breakfast in bed made it all the more significant. So the breakfast in bed was something I was used to, but his packed suitcase next to the bed was a reminder. He said he had a surprise and that we were flying out this morning. Since it is his private plane, there was not a specific departure time, but he did say we had some appointments. I didn't want to ruin his surprise, but I told him I needed a hint of where we were going and what we were doing so I can pack accordingly. He said, "Okay, pack something you would wear if you were going to New York and we were meeting my parents." I said, "Oh really? So we are going to be doing something formal, like see a play?" He said, "No, we actually are going to be having dinner with my parents." And then he laughed, but he was being serious. I laughed and screamed at the same time. He knows I'm a flight risk. So, I understand why he was trying to surprise me. I would have chickened out. I actually did try to push back. I told him I need to get a hair appointment. He said, "You couldn't look more perfect than you do right now if you tried. It would be unfair. You would be taking a slot for someone with a real hair emergency." He has such a way with words. Which is no surprise, we both built our companies around being master negotiators. He said he found out last night, when I was driving around, that his parents were going to be in New York. He said he talks about me and has sent pictures, so he thought it was time for them to meet me. Over and over, he blows my mind. There would be no awkward meeting the parents for the first time and them finding out I'm black. Joon-Hung wouldn't put me or his parents in an uncomfortable position. Someone that does that is playing games. Joon-Hung is a game changer. Every time I start to question his intentions, his actions squashed my apprehension. I had to stop doubting him based on my past. He said he also was looking at some real estate in New York and wanted to get my opinion. I am meeting his parents and being taken to look at property. That quiets all of those voices that said I was a curiosity that he would eventually discard. I was down for whatever. I just had one selfish request. Would we have time to go to Harlem? And he said yes, absolutely. But let's talk about last night. By that, he was referring to the full meltdown I had. When you saw my ex-wife on the Korean Housewife TV show, I know that was a trigger. It's hard to know when to bring up your past, when you finally take the time to try to build a future. He apologized. But I understood, especially after the Jared incident. So after we had our coffee, then he wanted us to have the talk about his ex-wife. He shared with me things about his ex-wife, his son, the divorce, the custody battle, or broadcasting their business on reality TV. But the most important thing he shared was that he accepted some of the blame for their divorce. He didn't have an affair, but he didn't mentally check out, and just waited until she had an affair first. He then used her affair as a reason to end the marriage.
My ex-wife's name is Jinmin. Her family was wealthy, and so my parents thought their status was on the same level as our status, so that's why they picked her for me. I married at 20. I thought my parents knew best. They didn't want me causing scandals, being a playboy, and bringing shame to our family, so they had me marry young, but she is now their worst fears. She creates scandal as a sport. That reality television show is a weapon she uses to hurt my parents. and it even affected you. Jinmin's insides does not match the outside. She looks fragile like a piece of porcelain. The problem is she is untouchable, cold. You can look but don't touch. There was no connection as a wife and not as a mother. She got pregnant right away, and I can say I never touched her again. Dasha, if it seems like I cannot keep my hands off of you, or I never let go first when we hug, or I find joy helping you wash your hair, it's because it's what I was missing. When I'm touching and connecting with you, it is how I recharge my batteries and my soul. My parents were hands-on. Showing love was first, and money and material things were second. I have not given my son the same. He is only 5, and I have failed him, and I have failed him for the rest of his life. This is a big regret. After she had our son, she felt she had fulfilled her obligation to me and my parents. Her plan was to spend the rest of her days spending my money and my parents' money. I had nannies and went to boarding school, but my mom was hands-on. I had no idea there was such a thing as a mother that did not desire to bond with her child. How she acted toward our child is what made me know I did not want to be this woman. As you know, I call him 3 times a day, in the morning, lunchtime, and bedtime. It's still not enough. I don't want to be a dad he only knows through video phone calls. He is only 5 and I have failed him. I want to make it right and take action soon before it scars him for the rest of his life. I only pray it's not too late already.
He didn't trash talk and speak negative of her. He just said their values weren't aligned, and there was no changing what defines a person's core. He does his best to respect her as being the mother of his son, who is 5 years old. His voice cracked as he talked about him. He couldn't take his eyes off his pictures. It has been 12 months since he saw him, but he was expecting to see him soon. I know Joon-Hung being in Dayton was part of the reason there was distance between them. I look over and his face has a single tear. I kissed the corner of his eye and said, I can't wait to meet him. A man who has it all, but the thing he longs for the most is his son, says it all. Joon-Hung was so much more than his net worth. She wasn't his choice. His parents, his mom, specifically brought them together. But in a way, since he had done what they wanted, and it turned out not good, they now don't set expectation for who he should be with. His ex-wife made it easier for my introduction to be less controversial. At least, I was hoping. He talked about how embarrassing the reality show was to his family. She uses it like a form of blackmail. This causes him great shame. It brings negative attention to his family. And that overshadows his business image. Andy, his biggest fear is that his son learning about his parents through that show when he is older. Him being so open and transparent was so sexy. After we talked, I had a clear heart and a clear mind. My trepidations from the night before were gone. We could not help it, but all of that vulnerability led to a slight detour in the schedule. That's when you appreciate he owns the plane, so he decides when it takes off. Eventually, we got out of bed, got dressed, and got ready. It was New York. Here we come. Little did I know this was leading up to a one-way trip to New York, but I found out more about that once we were in the air. New boyfriend. New city, New York. We had turned a corner. That talk was a relationship phase changer. We were moving out of that phase where we were trying to be perfect and were wearing masks to hide our imperfections. We were in the reveal phase. And when you're being transparent and vulnerable, humor helps. I was always looking for ways to get him to smile, like in the elevator. And for me, I was smiling just holding his hand as we headed toward the next step in this adventure. The person doing the most judging when you are being brutally honest, that person is you judging yourself. On that day, the plane was a confessional. One thing I can say is billionaires get embarrassed, stage fright, have doubts, have second thoughts and regrets, but the difference is that they can't admit them, or else those things will be used against you. One of the rarest commodities at his level is trust. I never thought of him as my billionaire boyfriend. He was so much more than his net. He was a gentle soul that loved deeply. A good father, a good son, and a good friend. But he was also isolated and insulated. But with me, he got to venture off of his pampered pedestal and experience things at a ground level. His love language was actions that elevated me, and my love language was actions that helped him feel grounded. Whether you're rich or poor, trust is the most precious of commodities. I would still have a few flashes of wondering if this was real, or a dream, or was it a fling. But sitting here looking at real estate on his plane head to meet his parents sure feels like I'm a part of his future plans. Joon-Hung clearly was a man who had a plan. So, I sent my black girl can't trust nobody on a mental timeout.
Hey, would you like to see the reason, other than meeting my parents, for this trip?
He told me he had some portfolios with a couple of properties that he was looking at, and did I want to look at them? The price tag was $2 million and up. 9 months ago, I would have just been an advisor, and I would charge him for a consultation. So now I'm his woman, and free consultation is one of the perks. Of course, this was all in my head and just an inside joke. The funny part is that I was thinking if he had not been good in bed, then I really would be charging him, or he would be hiring another consultant. Good thing there are no complaints in the bedroom, whatsoever. As I'm sitting here smiling at him, it's a good thing he doesn't know all the twisted, crazy thoughts that randomly pop in my head. I asked him, is this property shopping trip for the business, or for you to live? Are you thinking about moving to New York? I wasn't expecting him to say what he said next. This was my test question. If he said yes, he was moving to New York. Then I'll be tucking tail and telling Jared that I was wrong. He was right. He said, it's for both housing and office spaces. You know, for our work, and for the global network, we need to tap into New York. New York needs to be the hub. So you are moving to New York? I was asking questions and trying to be nonchalant, but I was praying for one answer and dreading that if he said yes, he was moving to New York full-time, and I was going to be in Dayton. It would not just bust my bubble, but shatter it into shards of sharp glass. In my mind, I wanted to run toward the exit and jump out of this moving plane. He said, for the last 9 months, nothing I do is just for me. Everything I do is for us. You and I. So, you are asking me to leave Dayton. He said, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. We don't have to make final decisions. But I want to just start looking at the possibilities. I didn't always see this in the beginning, but over time, I noticed how if he had a plan or idea, he always left room for my input. He didn't have to include my input because he really had the final decision, especially if he was funding it. But he never made me feel like my input was not valued or that it didn't hold weight. Bottom line is I had equal say in decisions. But he had the data to confirm New York was where we needed to be. There was listing for where we would live, with a space for his son. A space for the live-in staff. Separate facilities for my office, and 40 workers and separate building for him to have 200 to 300 employees. This was like a glimpse into a whole different world. Bet it goes back to operating on a whole different level. Even on the low end, I could not afford these properties. And my thought was that I didn't want him to buy or pay for me. But based on what I could afford, I'd be in New Jersey and he'd be in New York. Hi, Mom. We are headed to New York. We're on Joon-Hung's jet. Yeah, he surprised me last night and told me he is introducing me to his parents and looking at some real estate he's investing in. I asked her, what are you and Dad up to? Mom said they weren't getting into anything but definitely going to church on Sunday. It was a pretty typical Saturday morning check-in. Except the part that I was flying to New York for the weekend.
I like him, Dasha. He treats you good and makes you happy. I know he has a lot of money, but what I want to know is, if he is a Christian, I want you to bring him to church. I think the pastor should meet him. Is he a Christian?
This was normal for Mom to bring up church, so I didn't suspect anything unusual. He had fallen asleep while I was talking to my mom. I don't actually get to see him sleeping. He's almost on all of the time. He is up before I get up, and he is up after I've passed out. It gives me just a few minutes to tell myself, hey sis. Hey black girl, you done good for yourself? A little mental pat on the back. We own ourselves some positive affirmations to offset the bouts of self-doubt. My mind is flooded with thoughts. I already know that moving to New York would be a game changer. And I have to be thankful he didn't ask me to move to Korea, at least not yet. But life is about changing and growing. Moving forward with Joon-Hung means moving to New York. That means leaving Dayton behind, and I just got home. I haven't been home long enough for them to get on my nerves. I would be leaving my sister and my now 6-month-old nephew, leaving mom and dad. Leaving my grandmom, who I don't know how long she'll still be with us. There are so many things to do. I'll have to lay off my 40 office workers and hire people in New York. Do I sell or rent my condo? I'd have to find a new church and find a new hairdresser. Finding a good hairdresser is not easy. I'll miss a lot of people, but I won't miss Jared, and I won't have to be always looking over my shoulder. And speaking of Jared, he is blowing up my phone. I don't want to bring this baggage into my relationship. Jared and I need to move on. Joon-Hung isn't the reason I'm not with Jared. Jared is the reason. Jared is only sweating me because he sees someone taking interest in me. Jared is a cloud that can get to me even when I'm 30,000 feet in the air. Some say I should stop texting him back, but when I do, he shows up. I can't figure out how to switch Jared off. And this isn't even about love. This is about his ego and him thinking he had dibs on me that carries over from middle school. But honestly, it makes me mad because did Jared not think that anyone else wanted me, let alone it turn out to be a Joon-Hung that would want me and treat me right? Even if it wasn't a Joon-Hung, I deserve to be treated better and not cheated on every time he was left in a room with another woman. And use the excuse that we were on a break. If Joon-Hung recognizes and acknowledges that I have options, why can't a Jared? Delete, delete, delete. I fast as I delete his text. A new one came in. He was starting to scare me, if I'm honest. Jared thought I would always be there. Joon-Hung came for me like I was once in a lifetime. And I feel the same way about him. New man, new state, New York. I don't know if my angry texting jarred Joon-Hung awake. I slipped my phone back in my purse. It has been decades of Jared finding his way into my head, zapping my energy doing it through my family. Jared just gave me the motivation to really embrace this trip and take this next move seriously. My hesitation was gone. Little did Jared know that he just helped me make the decision to take the next step in my relationship with Joon-Hung. Jared's behavior ended up causing the opposite outcome of what he intended. Joon-Hung and I deserve to not be haunted by the past. New York City would be our clean slate, or so I hoped. I couldn't match Joon-Hung dollar for dollar when it came to grand gestures, but if I can keep him smiling and laughing, what I gave didn't have a monetary value. And sometimes it's about what you don't bring into the relationship. Like brining drama and baggage. That sometimes is all it takes for someone to check out. And definitely wanted to avoid bringing him problems he had to solve. Jared was my problem, and I needed to solve it sooner versus later. The good and bad part is that our phone worked when we were on his plane. He received some call. He stepped to the back of the plane and he spoke in Korean instead of English. That means he was speaking to someone who only spoke Korean. He didn't want others to know what he was saying, or he was angry. In this case, he sounded angry. He wasn't happy about something. I could tell Joon-Hung was tense. But I had to trust that I didn't need to know the topic of his every phone conversation. He showed me he wasn't afraid to share, so I just let him tell me when he was ready. Trust is a muscle you have use on a daily basis. I had a meltdown on Friday, so I had given myself the assignment of a drama-free Saturday and Sunday. I was determined not to fixate on why Joon-Hung seemed so intense on the phone calls he was getting. When he got back to his seat, he did not bring up the phone call. We were about to land, so we just focused on that. When he woke and saw me looking out the window, he asked, "Do you see our future down there?" And I surprised him by saying without hesitation, "Yes, I do. New York City, ready or not." When we got settled into the suite at the hotel, he suggested we go to Harlem first. I didn't want to derail his plans. I asked him about the real estate showings. Didn't we have appointments? He said he could make a phone call and get it pushed out. He wanted to honor my request, so we didn't run out of time. We found a coffee bar lounge in a very old refurbished building, which had a lot of history and artifacts. I fell in love with it. This building spoke to me, and I told Joon-Hung, those pictures in the portfolio didn't speak to me. When something speaks to you, it feeds your soul. I feel like I'm connecting with the ancestors, and their stories are recorded in the bricks. I apologized if it sounded corny, and he told me never to apologize for speaking your truth. I lived in Korea for 3 years, so I saw for myself what growing up in a homogeneous world of shared customs was like. He had traveled to America many times, but our day in Harlem wasn't just sightseeing. With my narration, it was an experience. And Joon-Hung listened so intently. He was speechless at time, and I even saw his eyes well up. He wasn't just a good listener, he was some who listened with his whole heart. That's what made him special. He got a phone call, so he told me to order for both of us. He had been getting a lot of phone calls all morning, but I figured it was tied to the real estate appointments. I had not heard him get heated when it came to business and work, but I had never heard this tone of voice. It was something personal. It caught my attention. Who and what made him so mad, I wondered, but I wasn't about to find out. I know Korean, but he was speaking fast and with fire in his voice. But even if I don't know what he was saying, you know by now, I'm good at speculating and creating false narratives. My initial thoughts was, is this his parents telling him, I don't want to meet that black woman? Was this his ex-wife, with an attempt to blackmail him, to embarrass his family, and to get more money? If this was about business, did a business deal go bad? Was it something that was going to ruin all that he built? Was his empire about to collapse? Was this Luke's life I just got introduced about to come to an end? Whatever it was, he didn't talk about it. I saw him hang up the phone, recalibrate mentally and physically, and then we found a table and waited for our refreshments. I knew in due time we would talk about the phone calls, but he obviously did not think it needed to disrupt our fun. Harlem brought me so much joy, and we were only here for the weekend. He knew we were having a moment, and was doing everything to stay in the moment. Joon-Hung was human. He was complex and had layers like all of us. That's why seeing him like this is just a reality check that he was not perfect, and his world wasn't perfect, and that he had bad days and that things got under his skin. Black girls don't own the corner on that market, although we sometimes feel entitled. When two people are merging two worlds, your messes and baggage will inevitably spill over into your shared time and space. That's a part of two, becoming one. I knew some of Joon-Hung baggage was going to spill over eventually, I just didn't know when. For the main course, I ordered the greens, macaroni and cheese, fried chicken and cornbread. But my weakness is dessert, black sugar decadence at its finest. Sweet potato cookies, red velvet lollipops, pecan tarts, a banana pudding parfait. I wanted him to have a taste of Harlem. Surely, African American classics puts anyone in a good mood. Soul food is comfort food. It made me realize that I always thought that I needed to only date a man who had my experience, but then I realized that I just needed someone that had an appreciation for how my experience as a black woman. And when we left the shop, we walked across a window front with available real estate in Harlem on display. We actually spent the rest of the day until it was time to get back to the hotel to get changed to see his parents. We had a good 6 hours to explore Harlem. I try to share my African American experience, but I told him I can't speak for all African Americans. Because one truth about our experience is that it is anything but homogeneous. It's quite the opposite. The black experience is diverse, colorful, diaspora. You could be more different than his Korea experience. But Joon-Hung can always put things in perspective.
The difference in our culture intrigues me, but we are together just to provide the love, can thrive in spite of differences. We connected because our values are the same. We value family, culture, our work ethic, and we believe in perseverance. And that's why when we decide till the time is right for us to move to New York, know that I will always make a way for you to have access to your family.
And before we knew it, it was time to meet the parents. Speaking of keeping secrets and surprising each other, I had a surprise for Joon-Hung. I was still festering on the fact he just told me this morning I was meeting his parents. and I was going to deliver my surprise right in front of his parents. He's going to find out too, can play at this game of shock and surprise. We walked in the finest of Korean dining establishments. He told me his parents speak and understand English very well. But I told him, no worries, if you need me to order for the table. I've gotten pretty good at reading menus written in Korean, I joked. One of our rituals when we went out to eat, he had been teaching me to read the Korean menus. He loved being my teacher, and I wanted to be his best student. And people's reaction to a black girl speaking Korean was priceless. We walked in and we were arm in arm, but once I realized we were approaching the table where his parents were seated, I removed my arm from his. He was a little puzzled, but we continued to approach. Joon-Hung introduced me, and I bowed and said it was nice to meet them. When we were all seated, I made sure to refrain from contact with Joon-Hung. It's considered to be disrespectful. Joon-Hung told them about our trip to Harlem, and they actually knew some things about Harlem. His mom even disclosed she was a fan of Showtime at the Apollo. Joon-Hung never knew it, and it made him laugh. The meal and the exchange was smooth. Clearly, this is what generational wealth looks like. Now that I met his parents, I could see exactly how Joon-Hung became the refined, pragmatic but gentle soul that he was. He had the utmost respect and reverence for his parents, but he was very transparent. With them that I made him happy, and from the moment we allowed ourselves to make the connection, it was like I breathed life into his lifeless corpse, and he's been full of life ever since. This was his words, not mine. I never had anyone praise me so openly and without a filter, let alone to his parents. I knew I couldn't say it as poetically as he did, but what I did say has been my greatest joy to get to know Joon-Hung. I thank you for raising this man of character, honor, and integrity, and for the type of father your grandson deserves. And then it was time to spring my surprise. I said, I love your son very much, and I will strive every day to bring him joy. The surprise is that I said it in perfect Korean. I saw his mom smile to show she was pleased. He has his mother's smile. His father bowed his head, which was a great compliment. I saw Joon-Hung's eyes watering. I think my eyes started to tear up at some point, but I held it together. Sometimes you have to hold back for the sake of your makeup. His parents made it clear they just wanted their son to be happy, and that they could see clearly I excelled in that area. It was the perfect meeting the parents. No drama. His mom saw us spoke in English all night, but just as we departed, she said some in Korean. He said, Mom, in a scolding voice, she understands Korean very well. His mom apologized and was embarrassed that her son scolded her. We said our goodbyes, and Joon-Hung happened to see one of the horse and carriages outside the restaurant. We jumped into one without hesitation. All had gone well, except that awkward moment at the end. I couldn't help but wonder, did she say something derogatory? I know Korean, but I didn't catch it. But Joon-Hung made it clear. He respectfully wasn't going to tolerate any disrespect toward or around me. Once we were in the carriage, and out of the sightline of his parents, we could cuddle, make contact, and show public displays of affection. American style. For me, the night was perfect. But for him, there was still one thing missing, and he let me know what that was, when he said, I want you to meet my son soon. I knew he was letting me know, other than his parents, that his son and I were the most important people, and that bringing us together would make his world, and would make this night complete for him. I think was a glimpse of the future, but for tonight, it was just Joon-Hung and Dasha. And then we pulled up to the park and Joon-Hung said, look, they're doing nighttime balloon rides. I was like, oh wow. I just could not believe there wasn't a line or that we didn't need reservations. I would think everyone and their mama would be lining up for a hot air balloon ride at night over New York City. How lucky are we? But since I've been with Joon-Hung, magical things were happening all of the time. Who was I to question what was happening? I don't think I actually walked to the balloon. I think I floated. I don't know if it was just adrenaline left over from meeting the parents, or if it was the bottomless champagne. I was completely sprung. Go from a horse and carriage ride to a balloon ride in one night. I was thinking, why not? Who goes to Disneyland and only rides one ride? I did have a moment to reflect and think of how never even in my wildest dreams did I think something like this would happen to me or for me. That little black girl named Dasha Wilkins. As a little girl, I don't remember any stories about black girls being the romantic lead, so how could I imagine something so far-fetched? So, let's just see where we go from here. Stay tuned.